The theme of the Week 12 main slate for DFS was pain. And I should say the Week 12 in general, not just the main slate, because Thanksgiving was a lot of the same as well. I mean, pain from a literal perspective, a lot of really annoying injuries for these players, as they get dinged up constantly, which I'm sure is frustrating for them. A lot of guys who are very popular for daily fantasy getting injured as well, which is less of a concern, but still a thing worth noting for us. And that leads to pain in our bank accounts. A lot of guys we were on got hurt during this week. So we're going to break down the implications of the injuries, what that means going forward, what to do with potential replacements, and much more. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, Week 12 is mostly in the books. How are you doing today?
Oh boy, I could be better. I'll say that much. Obviously the injuries to more NFL players than we're going to discuss because we're talking about the primarily fantasy relevant players. It's always bad, so it's hard to relate how I'm feeling compared to that stuff, and I want to keep that in perspective. But I lock buttoned Tom Brady this week. We discussed potentially doing that on Thursday's show. That's where I wound up. The Buccaneers scored 38 points. Tom Brady, not nearly 38, 12.24 on FanDuel. One of the lowest outputs since 2000 of any quarterback who played snaps on a team that put up 38 points. So, I mean, I think the process was probably there. Just the touchdowns didn't go his favor. But that is the path to busting for these pass-only quarterbacks that you and I are generally wary about. We just didn't have a whole lot of rushing quarterbacks to go for this week.
Yeah. So I had a lot of Leonard Fournette, but a lot of it was tied to Tom Brady because when I had Brady, I had Evans or Godwin, and those were high salary guys with Michael Pittman for the most part. And I needed lower salary backs to make things easier. And Fournette was a way to do so. And I thought, okay, they're not going to double dip too much, which they did get one touchdown double dipping. But Fournette is $7,100, should have a good day. So that negated the Fournette big days. I had a decent amount of Joe Mixon, even in some of the high dollar stuff, but it got negated by Tom Brady and Mike Evans. So my mistake erasers were there, but they couldn't erase the mistakes because the mistakes were too great in a lot of the points. And I think that was, it definitely happens. It did the Christian McCaffrey stuff. That was, that happened. Miles Sanders happened. Dalvin Cook got banged up late in that game. And those were all core plays for me after we lost AJ Dillon as being a key focal point, which we didn't have Jeff Wilson as being key focal point. So it funneled me towards more Miles Sanders. It did funnel me towards more Fournette, I guess, which is good. But either way, wound up being a pretty disappointing slate. Thanksgiving, the same for me as well. How did Thanksgiving go for you?
Just extremely forgettable. I mean, it's the slate that I always know is, look, I can put in a lot of prep for it, and I do, and I look forward to it, and I really think differently, and we go over things like optimal trends in three-game slates, and, that long-term should help us make better lineups, but that's not a guarantee to have great lineups on a three-game slate, just because things can go pretty crazy. So, I mean, it could have been, that really wasn't that close, I guess. I went pretty heavy Tony Jones, and I also played him in season-long spots, which really burned me.
I went pretty heavy DeAndre Swift once we knew Jared Goff was starting. I went pretty heavy on Darren Waller. A lot of fun. Really, a lot of Manny too, but that one wasn't an injury. That was just a bad choice on my part. So, we're ready to move on to week 13, which we will do here in just a bit. But first, FanDuel Sunday Million is now posted for week number 13. It is a $1.6 million prize pool. First place taking home $300,000. All you got to do is head to FanDuel today. Click on the NFL Sunday Million contest, draft your lineup of players, sit back and enjoy Sunday NFL football. Go to FanDuel.com today to participate in the FanDuel Sunday Million. Eligibility restrictions apply. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app for more details. And our Week 12 headliner, of course, is those running back injuries, because there were a lot of them. And it doesn't seem like a lot of them are like super, super long-term things, but they do seem like things that could open up some stuff heading into week number 13. Let's start things off here with Christian McCaffrey, probably the biggest unknown, I would say, as far as his timeline right now. McCaffrey was in a walking boot after Sunday's game when he turned his ankle in the first half. He did play a snap in the second half, but he was out after that. Ameer Abdullah played half the snaps for the full game, but just 2 carries and 6 targets. Chuba Hubbard may have played more had that game been more competitive, but I think it's pretty clear recently that Ameer Abdullah is definitely the passing game back with no McCaffrey, and probably going to take away some from Chuba on early downs too. So are we just going to avoid this backfield if McCaffrey misses time?
Yeah, I don't really see a whole lot of interest in this offense anyway, especially with how Cam Newton played, the 5.8 passer rating. And I wasn't like totally sold on Cam. I did a trend on him leading into the week, and I saw that there was enough there. He had basically league average passing efficiency. That completely went away. So I'm not going to overreact and say like, oh, now he's the worst passer in football, anything like that. I think he was like 5 for 22, something crazy with his completions. But I'm not going to jump off entirely if McCaffrey were there, but without McCaffrey, I don't really see that there's enough juice to want to go to anyone in this offense.
Yeah, and it stinks because like there are like fun, like DJ Moore is a fun player in this offense. Cam is a fun player, but if there's no McCaffrey to turn to, Cam I think can still have like a 25-point FanDuel game, but you need a lot of stuff to go right. He had 27 last week, so obviously he can do that, but probably not the right spot to do it versus a Miami defense that will get after the quarterback against a really bad offensive line. They're on bye this week, which may help things for McCaffrey, but we'll see where they're at after that. Dalvin Cook was carted off in the third quarter due to what's reported as being a dislocated shoulder. If we look at after Dalvin left, Alexander Mattison had 16 snaps. He had 4 carries and 3 targets. Kenny Nwangwu had 1 snap and 1 carry. Now, the tough dynamic here is we've seen the Vikings with no Dalvin in the past, and Mattison was disgusting. He had 26 carries per game, 7.5 targets per game, 162 yards per game. But Kenny Nwangwu was on IR for both those games, and Mike Zimmer said after the game they want to get him more run at running back, which is something I thought would happen previously when we talked about this in passing with Dalvin stuff. So I think that to me, Brandon, I would view Mattison as like a downgraded version of what he was before, which is still a very viable fantasy running back, but I'm not expecting like 40 adjusted opportunities or so per game. I think that, bumping him down a decent amount is fair. Where are you at with at Mattison if we assume Dalvin Cook misses time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you where we have reasons to believe that his workload wouldn't be just 100% of this backfield, but I'm curious because you had this take before with Mattison because I think we had a Dalvin Cook scare that he might miss a game. Yeah. What was your thought on the breakdown of the post Dalvin injury? Like, why not? Like, why did Mattison get so much work there? Like, what are you thinking? Because I think you and I think a little bit differently about this one.
Right. So the thought process would be if they knew Dalvin was going to miss time, they would get in Nwangwu more practice reps at running back, which I'm guessing has probably not been happening. Just because they have Dalvin, why bother? So that's kind of my thought process is I do value that practice time, value preparation. It's kind of like we had this conversation a bit too with James Conner, Benjamin, where when Chase Edmonds got hurt, they didn't have a chance to get Benjamin reps in practice. They didn't really use him during that game. And in that instance, James Conner still had a great role. And I think that Mattison could have that here, but that's in the back of my mind where I would not, because Nwangwu has speed that Mattison doesn't. And that's why I think it's a different dynamic. So I would still, if I were thinking of a comp for Madison's workload, what I would expect from him, if Dalvin can't go, it's probably like a Joe Mixon type role, which is a very valuable role, but I'm not expecting D'Angelo Williams back in the day when Le'Veon Bell was out type role where he gets every single chance he possibly can. So still a very good role, just not quite what it was.
Yeah, I got you. I just wanted you kind of to clarify because I think it's a worthwhile thought exercise to explain why, hey, Madison had so much work, what's going to be different. And I agree with you. Now, I
Yeah.
will say that they play the Lions next week. So if Dalvin's back, we're going to want to play Dalvin.
Yep.
If not, I still think that there's going to be some interest in this backfield unless you think it's a full-on committee. So name that salary for Alexander Mattison against the Lions in week 13.
So my projected workload for him against the Lions would be worthy of like an $8,300 salary. That's what I would say.
Okay, so that's higher than I would have expected from you. I would
Yeah.
have said about like 79 or so.
Okay.
Just in that
He
range.
is 87. So they are on
Okay.
it. And like he's $700 less than Joe Mixon. If Joe Mixon's a comp for me, then like, I'll take discount Mixon. Although I think Mixon's worth
Mixon's
that salary too.
94. Wow.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to look ahead. But he's facing the Chargers. I think that's a decently big part of it.
Yeah, I mean it's impossible to pull up the slate and not see anything.
Yeah.
I think Jonathan Taylor's 10-5 against the Texans.
As he should be. Oh, you're wearing a Texans shirt? Is that because of Chris Conley or what is that?
It's because it was a TJ Maxx for like $3.
Okay. I have a Santonio Holmes jersey that I got for $10 for the same reason. So we're similar shoppers, which is disconcerting. Anyway, I think the 87 is like a fair number for him. It's high enough though where I'm not saying lock button type situation. Like that is you need to actually think about it at 87, right?
Yeah. I think that's actually a really great like preventative price salary for Madison.
I agree. The Cowboys may consider sitting Zeke Elliott due to his knee injury. Apparently, they have not approached him about this. Just reading about this now. They have not approached him about it yet, but it's something we should at least discuss. Tony Pollard had 10 carries on Thursday and added 4 targets. Zeke still got usage, just didn't do a lot with it. The Cowboys play the Saints on Thursday night. We know how to handle this backfield. Actually, we don't probably know how to handle it if he plays because like it's kind of weird right now. But how would you view Pollard as Zeke were to sit? Like, how high is the ceiling here?
Well, okay, so 2 things. I kind of saw that they would just kind of scale back his workload for Zeke.
Okay.
Not necessarily sit him outright, which they could do, of course. But I think that if Zeke is active, he's going to play some, but definitely not his full allotment. So I think that makes Zeke untouchable because even if he wants to play, if they don't put him on the field, he's not going to get fantasy points, which also kind of just speaks to like, they sometimes like Tony Pollard a lot of people think he's more talented, but if he's not on the field, it doesn't matter. So, so I would say without Zeke, Pollard would be, I mean, we've seen him be pretty unleashed. He looks phenomenal. If he were on the main slate, I would say like 9,000.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's kind of like the role he would have. If we get him with like a limited Zeke, then Pollard, I still think is worth like 75 or so because the way he gets touches is so valuable because it's not like just handoffs. It's like creative handoffs, creative targets, and there's a lot of juice in those. So it's not because, it is because he's talented, but it's also because they use him in fun ways. So I would say 75 or so is like where I'd be thinking. If Zeke were to be like scaled back, I think is where I'd kind of land there with Pollard, realistically.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good situation though for Pollard to be, and kind of thankfully we'll get some clarity on a non-main slate, at least for us. But
right. The question is, do they scale back Zeke because it's a shorter week, and then when they had the long week, they scale him back up? I don't know. It's a headache. Hopefully, like, just let him rest. Like, you've got good backups. Just, like, lean on them for a bit. Let him heal up, but, whatever. DeAndre Swift banged his shoulder against the Bears and is considered day-to-day. Jamal Williams had a 67% snap rate, and that was with Swift playing about 20%. So, like, basically Jamal had everything. 15 carries and 5 targets for 83 yards. It is a very bad team, but they showed they will lean on him. So hypothetically, if DeAndre Swift misses this Minnesota game, how are you viewing Jamal Williams there?
Okay, so we've seen Swift without Williams, and Swift was basically just a full-on feature back. Williams probably would get a similar workload, but not be quite as explosive. This offense is not particularly good. Their implied team total next week's 20.25,
which is higher than I would have expected.
It is. 47.5 point total, 7-point spread. They are at home, so that's helping a bit. I think the question is, where would you put Swift and then scale it back from there within this matchup?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So I'd probably put Swift at just because of the offense, I can never go super high on him. He's probably close with that workload at 8,000. So Williams maybe 75, 76.
That's exactly what I always said on both. Personally, I think that's correct. So let's check out here. For that Minnesota-Detroit game, Jamal is 65 and DeAndre Swift is 72.
Okay.
So we're going to be talking about this backfield one way or another, I think.
Yeah, if it's Swift, we'll talk about him. If it's no Swift, we'll talk about Williams.
Because we know Dan Campbell wants to run. We know they're on 10 days rest. We know the Vikings rush defense has lost 16 different guys the past week or so. I also kind of think they've looked better offensively with Josh Reynolds. I know it's a 1-game sample with him and Goff, but Goff's efficiency numbers actually weren't bad on Thanksgiving. So maybe Josh Reynolds helps lift them a bit. I think we're going to talk about the Lions on Thursday, and I'm not talking about Reynolds.
I felt a trend coming.
I don't want to. I don't want to.
But I mean, honestly, though, at this point, we're going to talk about the 3 bookmaker, 3 games in the bookmaker section. So that's 6 of the best offenses on the slate.
Yeah, you're probably right.
And then it's an 11-game main slate. 2, 4.
One of the highest totals in the slate is Las Vegas versus Washington, and I want to vomit.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're going to be talking about. Well, I mean, speaking of this game, 11 games on the main slate. This one's 5th and over under at 47.5.
Oh boy, we're going to be talking about Lions on Thursday. What could go wrong? Speaking of what could go wrong, me using a lot of Miles Sanders. In this one, he looked good, but he tweaked his ankle against the Giants. He tried to come back in. He came back in for a play, but mostly Boston Scott. Then Boston Scott lost a fumble on a key drive, and Kenneth Gainwell finally played. All it took was 2 injuries and a key fumble. Kenneth Gainwell got snaps in the final drive. Overall, Boston Scott had a 51% snap rate, 15 carries and 3 targets. Gainwell had 4 targets in that game. Basically, I think played just the final drive. But Sanders just came off IR, retweaked that ankle. I would not be shocked if he misses more time. We don't know the timeline on Howard. Doesn't seem like he was close to playing this week. So if we don't have Sanders and don't have Howard, how are you viewing this backfield?
So that would leave it to Scott and Gainwell.
Mm-hmm.
That's a better situation than with what Miles Sanders really had entering this week. So where would I put Sanders and then maybe bump it up for Scott? Because I think Boston Scott's a really good running back. So they're playing the Jets. They're on the road, 7-point favorites. I'd probably put him in the 65 range too.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate because I think that there's a chance with that late fumble they decide to give Kenneth Gainwell more run. I wouldn't expect that, but it's kind of like the Nwangwu stuff where it's in the back of your mind where it's a possibility. I'm still on the Minnesota.
You think that's right?
65, yeah.
He's 66. I almost said 66, but I think there's still question marks within this offense.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah. So I think if we get no Swift and no Miles Sanders within the matchup, especially for Scott, a lot of the optimizer lineups are going to have Scott, Jamal Williams, as sort of core plays. Of course, it's
between those two.
I mean, workload wise, I prefer Jamal Williams.
I do too. And I think that matters a lot.
Adjusting for the offenses, even with that, I still think I prefer Jamal Williams because the path for Jamal Williams to being a 50-50 timeshare seems almost zero. For Boston Scott, he could be just playing back up to Kenneth Gainwell for all we know.
Kind of surprised my numbers don't like the Jets more in that game. Anyway, we'll check back on that later. I was excited for that game, that Giants-Eagles game. It was a nightmare. Just a nightmare to watch. It was
bad.
Terrible across the board. we'll see if things change once I get the updated numbers in there from this week. Okay, so those are the key running back injuries for this week. Again, thankfully, seems like most of them are more short-term things. We'll check back on those later on. Other injuries to discuss here is moving to the injury section. Deebo Samuel, my beautiful son, left early with a groin injury. He sounds like he's more day-to-day-ish. He said he didn't think it was a big concern. He's dealt with the groin injury pretty much all year, and he said, hey, he felt it tightening up and called out of the game. So maybe he doesn't miss time, but like there is a chance that he does. Other key headline for this 49ers team is Eli Mitchell had 8 of 9 carries after Deebo left. He had 6 targets total for the entire game, which is absurd. So 2 questions. First, if Deebo misses time, we'll just start with this one first. How does it impact your view of the rest of this offense?
So this is one where, and because it's the first one of the show, I'll say here's the difference between like NBA DFS and NFL DFS. There's going to be more opportunity for guys like Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Eli Mitchell without Deebo Samuel, but the offensive efficiency is going to go down a lot. However, we still have George Kittle. We still have Brandon Ayuk, who's very clearly a good NFL wide receiver. Eli Mitchell kind of moving the needle as a running back. So while this would downgrade the offense, I do not think that it turns them into even close to cross-off territory or really even like concerned territory. Like they have their own issues with how they want to run the ball. So it's a volume issue for Ayuk and Kittle for me primarily, but that should actually get better market share wise. So I'm kind of good there. So my impact of the offense is kind of a wash to some degree because the volume should help overcome the efficiency concerns for the only guys that we would really be interested in. And as far as Mitchell goes, really, really promising usage. His main concern was they just didn't throw him the ball. I think through his first 4 starts, he had 4 targets, 2 games with no targets. So this is really, really good usage. And coming through that, like with that finger injury, there were reports that he couldn't really hold the ball. And then they sort of figured out a solution and then they just like featured him. So I think that it's kind of wheels up for Eli Mitchell too.
Would that be, how much would Michael Hasty playing impact that for you? Because I honestly have seen nothing that says Hasty will be back soon, but like, so he might not play. They showed previously they wanted to use Hasty as a passing game back, but honestly, like, I think they like Mitchell enough where they might consider just using him in the passing game anyway. I don't know. That's just reading into it. I don't want to try to read Kyle Shanahan's brain because that is a dangerous place to be.
Yeah, so I don't want to try to assume that Eli Mitchell holds on to pass game usage. I would rather approach it and say, hey, he's probably going to lose a lot of these targets, but he should still have the heavy majority of carries in a very, very run-heavy offense.
And a good rushing offense. Like, they're juicy carries. We talked about that before with someone else, but they're like Pollard, but they're not like 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They're 6 yards and maybe a linebacker gets a hand on you.
Yeah. So I would basically, if we get Hasty back, account for that where I'm saying, okay, how would I view Eli Mitchell if he loses all the passing game work? And if I'm still cool with the salary, I'll be there. If I need to sell myself on, he's got to have this passing game work for me to want to play him, then I'm probably going to back off if we get Hasty back.
So hypothetically, no Hasty. Where are we at on Eli Mitchell next week, salary-wise?
79.
I was going to say 8. 76. Not bad. Not bad. I think that 76 is low enough where if Hasty plays, I'm still going to be in on Mitchell. I would lower exposure stuff because like it's the path to fit. There's one more path to failure there, but like I'd still feel pretty good at 76. Pretty good. I would not feel great. Feel pretty good.
Yeah, and like if I look at a stat line or like a lengthy multiple per game average, and I see like 18 carries, 1 target, I'm like, that's not really enough for me. But within this offense and with Eli Mitchell, it's a bit different.
It's also not 18. It's 27 and 27 the past 2 games.
Yeah. But like, I'm not going to project anyone for 27 carries in a game.
You can project Deebo for that, apparently.
That's true. Oh yeah, if we lose Deebo too, I mean, the ceiling is the roof with Eli Mitchell's carries.
Wheels up. I hope Deebo plays. I want that for sure. But Eli Mitchell, He's a fun player getting fun usage, and I like that.
What about Ayuk and Kittle for you? With no
I think
Debo?
that what you said was correct, where it's like close to a wash. I would say a slight upgrade. So I think the Kittle is 7,000. That's what I would say. He is 63 though.
Yeah.
Okay. I know he
Mhm.
didn't do much this week, but Ayuk is 7,000. That's also fair. You know, I think that Ayuk maybe not like a cash game type play just because they are so committed to the run, but he'd be a consideration at least, right?
I think so, with
Yeah.
pretty nearly guaranteed volume. Kittle 50, 34, and 13 yards his past 3 on 7, 4, and 2 targets. He's been boosted by touchdowns, but we know that right before that he had a 100-yard game, 92. I don't worry about yardage upside with George Kittle.
Nor should we. Darren Waller hurt his knee against the Cowboys. Sounded like he may have avoided any major injuries. It is possible he misses time. Hunter Renfro got some downfield targets. Like Derek Carr lobbed it long, and I saw Renfro, and I was like, oh no. Because I didn't have enough on Thanksgiving or any. Hunter Renfro tied a season high with 9 targets. 2 of those were deep. Zay Jones had 7 targets, while Foster Moreau had 5. So I think Waller is a piece where we would downgrade the offense, like you said, with, talking about this in terms of like efficiency overall. I would downgrade the offense with no Waller, but how would it impact your view of Renfro, Jones, I guess hypothetically Deshaun Jackson, Foster Moreau if Waller can't play?
I'd be. This is a big injury for me on a team where I really needed to convince myself for reasons to like them. I talked a few times about Derek Carr's efficiency and ability to move the ball without Henry Ruggs just kind of being problematic. You take Darren Waller off the field, even though they don't always throw him the ball for whatever reason. I think the one takeaway here, pass catcher wise, because Josh Jacobs is a bit of a different conversation, would just be that Hunter Renfro, if the salary is below like 68, I think he would be moving into like 10 plus target cash game. Like if he's 66, I can kind of put him into a cash game lineup and feel pretty safe.
He's 64.
Like that. I know we have our concerns, but within that range of receiver, nobody has anything close to a floor. And receivers don't really have floors, but he would almost guaranteed like have a floor.
Yeah, and they finally got us some downfield looks, which is like my one concern with him. So like if I can't cling to that, if I can't cling to yardage upside, what do I have to like talk myself out of it? He's 64, so I don't know.
And they play Washington.
Yeah, it's a high total, tight spread. I don't want to do it, but I'm gonna have to. I think. Hopefully, I can talk myself out of it by Thursday. But
yeah, maybe okay. Yeah, maybe with the salary scroll, we'll uncover.
I hope so.
a bountiful 6,000 range at receiver, which has never been the case all season.
Please be the case. Please be the case. Like put Tyler Lockett at 58 or something stupid like that. Like just save me from this. Dan Arnold, speaking of should have saved me. Dan Arnold left after 5 snaps because of a knee injury. He is someone I actually did use this week. Didn't really want to, but like I needed salary savings to get to Christian McCaffrey. So I bumped down to Arnold in a couple lineups from Freiermuth. James O'Shaughnessy played 82% of the snaps. He had 5 targets. Laviska Shenault did lead with 9 targets, but shocker, 33 yards in those 9 targets. He was outsnapped by Laquan Treadwell, 61-52. Laquan Treadwell had 8 targets. Tavon Austin had a touchdown. What year is this? Marvin Jones had 7 targets for 43 yards, like the Island of Misfit Toys. There have been 3 games this year where a Jaguar had at least 80 receiving yards. So can we just cross this entire team off now? I had a couple shares of Marv too. I had a couple shares of Arnold because hey, the matchup's good. Nope, it wasn't.
Yeah, so this is like the team I keep looking at every single week. It's like, okay, there's some value here. Like there's got to be some value. And there's never results. We talk about Marvin Jones every now and then. Dan Arnold, I think, was still a good process play with his really strong market share. I cannot play Laviska Shenault. I think I need to see like 3 years of data on Shenault doing some stuff where I would really change my tune. James O'Shaughnessy is his salary is $4,500. So that's at least punt level noteworthy.
No.
I mean, come on.
No.
Well, I
It's
don't
like
know
the
what.
Daniel Jones thing all over again. No.
Well, I don't know what we have at tight end yet. We're gonna have Kittle under salaried. We'll have Mark Andrews, Darren Waller's teams on the slate. Your boy Tyler Higbee,
Don't call him that.
Gasicki,
I'm done. I'm done. I'm not saying that name anymore.
Gronk again. Oh,
What's Gronk's salary?
well, Gronk's getting
Whoa.
the Falcons in
Oh
the
my
dome.
gosh. Gronk 8,000.
7,000. He's
Wait,
7,000.
actually? Oh, I was joking. Okay. That's probably fair, though, honestly. We'll talk about that in role changes. Let's start now with the role changes, though, and stick with the Raiders. Go back to them briefly here because we typically talk about run pass ratio and philosophical changes. I think this one belongs in role changes because it directly impacts Josh Jacobs. The Raiders said they wanted to recommit to the rush, and they did. They had a 43% early down first half pass rate against the Cowboys. They had been at 56% in their first 3 games with no Henry Ruggs, and it led to Josh Jacobs getting season highs in carries, adjusted opportunities, so carries plus 2x targets, snap rate, and yards from scrimmage. He had 6 of 11 red zone chances. This is a legit role change for Josh Jacobs with this happening. So how are you altering your view of Josh Jacobs with this shift in philosophy for the Raiders?
Yeah, I mean, the arrow's up. Jacobs is one of the backs who I think you and I are. I don't know if consensus is really high on him, but
It's very low.
Even with that, I feel like we're in line or lower than consensus on Jacobs, just because the yardage upside historically not really there. Part of that can be workload related if he's not getting a whole lot of targets, but also just kind of a rushing efficiency situation. But if you're going to run the ball, and it makes sense for this team to run the ball, that helps. He's had yardage over expectation according to Next Gen Stats model in 4 games without Henry Ruggs. So like, there's enough here. I'm not going to say that he is on par with some of the other backs we talked about, but arrows up. I would like to hear your thoughts on Josh Jacobs while I really formulate a salary that I would want to pay for next week.
Yeah, my concern with him, we talked about the volume being pretty good for a bit, but like it doesn't matter if you're doing nothing with it. And like I think that's a legit concern because like we talked about having juice with Pollard and Mitchell. Not a lot of juice in those carries for Josh Jacobs. Whether that's him or the scheme, I'm not sure, but like it's true. There's not a lot of juice. That's different now. The target share has been good. He's been getting some work in the passing game. So I would say previously I thought that 68 was probably the right salary. So I think that bumping up to 7.2, somewhere around there is probably appropriate. What about you?
Okay, so I was gonna say low sevens,
Yeah.
and I didn't know if that felt too low for
No.
saying, hey, the arrow's up.
No.
But we have to keep in mind that he went from like upper 6s here, not like mid 7s already. So
Right.
yeah, I would say low 7s I would be comfortable with. But if they're going to run the ball a lot against Washington, that's kind of promising because they should be able to move the ball through the air and get into the red zone.
Right.
Jacobs is 7,000.
It's appropriate.
I think that's very, very appropriate.
I think we're going to have some mid-range backs this week, which I'm pretty excited about. We talked about Jamal, we talked about the Lions guys. I think we'll have some mid-range guys, and I think that Jacobs is at least in that discussion. He may not be a priority, but he's in that discussion for sure. Let's talk about another previous mid-range back. Not sure if he's still there, but that's Leonard Fournette. His snap rate spiked. We know the touchdowns, but the snap rate is kind of the key thing for us. 81% snap rate. That is his highest in a game where Giovanni Bernard was active. Gio, I don't know if he got hurt. I didn't see anything on him, but he barely played. Leonard Fournette, 33 adjusted opportunities. That is his 3rd time this year topping 30. He also had 131 yards from scrimmage. The touchdowns are awesome, but the peripherals were also super encouraging. They were already good, and they turned to being great on Sunday. So they get the Falcons on the made slate next week. Name that salary on Fortud Lenny.
So the question you have to ask here is, what are the odds that he remains an 80% snap rate back in a really good offense? And I know the workload's phenomenal, but what are the odds he's got legitimate touchdown equity still in a team that historically has thrown the ball a good bit at the goal line? I still think that those concerns are just nitpicky, but it's fair to nitpick whenever you're really considering putting a running back up into the upper echelon of elite running backs from a DFS standpoint. So I don't think I'm quite there where I would put him, in that tier 1 or tier 2, like depending on if we get like McCaffrey and JT or tier 1. But I would say probably like 8,000.
I was thinking 77 just because I think the yardage upside is still a bit, it's a bit annoying is the word I would say. And he's exactly 77. So I think that's fair. I like it's an increase, but I think it's a justifiable increase and a necessary increase because his role got better. He's in a very good offense. I think that to me, 77 is very appropriate. And I have no real concerns about that. And I'm okay going back to him next week again. I think that's fine.
I mean, he's got so this is total red zone opportunity. So carries plus your targets compared to your team. So he's got 31% of Tampa Bay's red zone opportunities. Zeke is at 31.2%. Josh Jacobs, 31%. Aaron Jones, 31%. We can round up. Damian Harris, the guy who has, this looks only games where guys were active.
Mm-hmm.
Damian Harris, who everyone loves his red zone role, 30%. So I guess it's actually been better than I realized all season. Maybe just hasn't converted. So maybe he was a touchdown regression candidate after all.
Yeah, I mean, I think the touchdowns are still like the biggest, which is weird to say after a 4 touchdown game. That's still his biggest flaw, more so than the yardage stuff. I went to Josh Jacobs. Why did I search Josh Jacobs? That was stupid.
Subliminal.
Apparently. Okay, so his red zone share had been below 40% in 4 consecutive games before this week. It's been above 40% now 3 times this year. So there's still I would not expect him to become this touchdown monster, but I think the yardage upside is enough where I can.
Is that 40%?
Okay.
40% opportunities or rushes?
Opportunities.
Isn't that a pretty good number though? 40%?
Not for an individual game. It's fine for an individual game.
Okay.
He's had it 3 times in individual games. I'm like, that's just kind of like whatever. So I don't know. 81% snap rate, I think it's the most encouraging thing. What?
I have my spreadsheet sorted by red zone opportunity share, and I have Jonathan Taylor at 52%.
That went down.
Derrick Henry at 46%, and then Austin Walter 46%.
He had like 6 goal line carries this week alone. I was wondering how much traffic player profiler got Austin Walter player profiler via search on Sunday. It was several of them were from me. Rob Gronkowski led the Buccaneers in targets with 10. He was the only Buck to go over 31 receiving yards. Woof. In games which Gronk has played relevant stats. So tossing out the Tampa Bay game or the New Orleans game where he barely played. Mike Evans has a 19% target share. Gronk is at 18%. Godwin, 17%. Evans leads with a 28% air yard share. The Buccaneers might be getting Antonio Brown back in week 13. So are we concerned that there are too many mouths to feed in this offense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know how you look at this. And I know that you were lower on Chris Godwin than I was this week, which kudos to you.
Still used him.
But I don't care how good a passing offense it is. Guessing right on potentially, let's call it even, I won't even consider Antonio Brown in this conversation. 3 guys with, and we'll call it just 18% target shares. Even call it 20% target shares. 20% target share is pretty low unless you're passing like 60 times a game. And for a ceiling game in DFS, you need volume, but you also need that efficiency. And all these guys are capable of outlier single game efficiency. Mike Evans can score 3 times on 5 targets because he's Mike Evans. Gronk can have huge yardage outputs for a tight end. Godwin can score at a high rate within single games, but whenever you really step back and look, this is going to be difficult to stack Tom Brady. And that makes it really difficult to play Tom Brady in tournaments because even if he goes off, if you tie that to Chris Godwin, and he gets 4 FanDuel points because Gronk and Mike Evans got 15 each or whatever. That's tough. So it weirdly does lower me on the pass catchers, even with just the 3, because they're not even getting like, if they were all like 23%, it'd be different. But, and it sounds like maybe splitting hairs if people don't really look at market share numbers, but
23 and 20 is a big difference.
Yeah, it is. So, and okay, talk to me about this trio if we don't have AB, and then if we get Antonio Brown back, what would it take you to play any of these guys with a modicum of confidence?
It lowers me a lot of them for one-offs, but I'd still stack them with Brady. I think that's the way I'd view it. But I think like my preference might just be to go Brady plus Lenny at that point. Like kind of similar to what I did with like Dak and Zeke a lot of times previously, because like, I don't know. Like it's possible none of them has a huge game and Brady does.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I think realistically I could just go Brady with Lenny and hope that Ronald Jones doesn't score again. That happened too. I forgot about that yesterday. I think that's probably the way I'd navigate around it. But like, I would still stack them. But like, as one-offs, it really hurt. You want to hear salaries?
I looked them up because I already knew where I was going to put them.
Yeah.
And they're about where I thought they would be.
Godwin is 76, Evans 74, and Gronk, as you said, is 7,000. Like those numbers are not high enough where I like need to, I can't stack them with Brady, but it's high enough where like as one-offs, like, is that really where I want to go? Stuff like that.
I mean, this would have been one of the reasons that I just like lock buttoned Brady was you could stack him with if you want to play Tom Brady and you think Tom Brady's in line for a huge game, I think at this point you either need to be open to the idea of missing out on the stack candidate. Like if you play 3 Tom Brady lineups and they're all with Mike Evans, you just have a chance that you miss out on the top fantasy point output from a pass catcher. But if you're willing to play all Tom Brady lineups, you can really get access to all these different opportunities. But that's only a multi-entry thought process there.
I think what we'll want to do is dig into the Bucks and ceiling games when they have all these guys active.
Yeah.
Can they still generate like a ceiling? If so, we take shots. If not, we don't. I think that's probably an assignment for me this week. Maybe not for the show on Thursday, but for situations to monitor potentially, and we'll talk about that. I'll try to get that
Thursday if we really want.
Yeah, I can group that in. Try to get that figured out. Aaron Jones returned to play 47% of the snaps to the Packers. He had 10 carries and a target. Now, Jones played a lot early on, did not play late because they were ahead. A.J. Dillon was doing A.J. Dillon stuff. Dillon had a 53% snap rate, 20 carries and 5 targets. It was a positive script, a Dillon script. They have a bye coming up. Jones is banged up. I think that those are reasons to think that what A.J. Dillon did this week is not what we should expect going forward. With that said, do I think that it's very, very possible / very, very likely A.J. Dillon gets those clock-killing carries late in games going forward? Abso-freaking-lutely. So that's where I'm at with this team right now. What about you?
Yeah, this feels weirdly like a Dalvin Cook situation where like when the Vikings were just steamrolling teams, but he wouldn't play in the fourth quarter.
Yes.
And so like he could have big games, but be kind of capped too. So, and I would honestly just view Aaron Jones' role as worse than that because it wouldn't surprise me if A.J. Dillon scored like a second quarter goal line touchdown either. It's not like he's going to have a Dalvin Cook role where he's playing 100% of the snaps until the end of the game. I think I was tallying things up. It was like a 65% snap rate at halftime for Aaron Jones. So you're right where it was his backfield primarily. And I know we get a bye, so we'll probably forget a lot of this by the time that they're back on the slate in week 14. But I'm gonna have a hard time playing Aaron Jones with like confidence unless his salary is really low.
So let me make a comp for Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones of old.
No, well, kind of, I guess. But like, I think that his role is going to be very similar to that of Kareem Hunt when Kareem Hunt has been healthy. Do you buy or sell that comp?
I think it'd be better.
but by how much? Not really, right?
Well, Hunt gets like a 44. So I actually have this note in games where they've played with he's played with Nick Chubb. He's at a 44% snap rate. I would put Aaron Jones at a
Snap
majority
rate higher,
rate.
but actual like
More,
volume.
I could see this. Yeah, I could see that. Maybe a
better
tinge
Kareem
higher,
Hunt, like Hunt
though.
plus. Okay, we'll go with that.
So Hunt's at I think 17.7 adjusted opportunities per game in the games that he's played with Nick Chubb. I would at least put Aaron Jones at like 19, 20, but not substantially higher.
Yeah, with a ceiling of like 25, I think. That's the big issue is like he's probably not going to get to 30 like adjusted opportunities. And I think that's the big issue for me. Let's talk about Kareem Hunt. He came back. The Browns backfield pretty split. Nick Chubb's workload is scaled back. It was a weird usage. Like they had a key third down and threw to Demetric Felton. I think it was only a snap of the game. Chubb played 49% of the snaps. Hunt played 39%. Chubb had 8 carries and 4 targets. Hunt had 7 carries and 1 target. If we look at the 6 game they played together, Chubb is at a 51% snap rate, 19.3 adjusted opportunities per game, 40% overall red zone share. Hunt is at a 44% snap rate, 17.7 adjusted opportunities per game, and a 25% red zone share. So I think they're on bye. So Baker might get a little healthier, which would probably be for the best. Where are we at on Chubb and Hunt, given that they're both healthy now?
They are on bye. I think they're back to where they were to start the season, and that was not a whole lot of interest unless the matchup is phenomenal or the salary is too low for Nick Chubb.
Or like it's a really good game stack, something like that.
Something like that. But other than that, it's just it's not the type of workload that you allocate as much salary as it generally takes to roster Nick Chubb.
Yeah. I tend
which is a convoluted way of saying he's generally oversalaried for the workload, but salaried appropriately really for his ceiling.
Yeah. And like he could still, if you told me like, hey, next time Chubb is out there, he goes for $130 and 2 touchdowns, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. I can totally see that. But like the range of outcomes is very high, and the odds of hitting his ceiling are lower because of Kareem Hunt's presence and the fact the offense is not that great right now. So I think oversalaried will be my baseline assumption going into week 14. Odell Beckham had a full integration game for the Rams. He actually tied for the team lead with 10 targets. Cooper Kupp also had 10 targets. Van Jefferson had 9. Beckham was a full-time player. Beckham also had 3 out of 10 deep targets, 1 out of 2 red zone targets. I will say that he did not lead in deep targets because Van Jefferson did, of course. How are you viewing Odell in this offense? But also let's talk about Cooper Kupp. Let's talk about Van, just overall this passing offense for the Rams.
Yeah. So Matthew Stafford ended up having one of the better FanDuel outputs of all quarterbacks this week. He seemed to be pretty banged up entering the week, so I was a little bit concerned. I didn't. That's what really got me off of Stafford himself. But with 3 very viable pass catchers, Van Jefferson's awesome. Cooper Kupp's very good. Odell Beckham very good.
I like how you use the better adjective for Van Jefferson.
I just caught that. But yeah, so we have just discussed the Buccaneers and target share concerns. We have a 1-game sample here with Odell really being like in the offense to the degree that it matters, but he had a 26% target share, same as Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson at 23%. If you gave me that with the 3 guys from the Bucs, I'd be like,
right, there's no Cameron Braid here. There's no Tyler Johnson. There's no whoever.
Yeah.
That helps a lot.
Yeah, and that's typically what we've seen from the Rams historically, or like at least recently. And that is a huge difference. So I wanted to kind of point out why I view this situation differently.
Yep.
I'm going to play Van Jefferson if his salary remains low. I don't know what it will be after he finally cashed in. You seem
finally, how dare you?
Well, I mean, he cashed in.
How dare you? Yeah, thank you. Good.
I think Odell's back on the menu. Cooper Kupp, I know his salary is going to be problematic.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Are you downgrading him at all or no?
I mean, he had 10 targets.
but like 10 is a downgrade for him.
That's true. He
I'm
actually
not,
had
but
the
like,
worst weighted workload of the three.
okay.
So, I would probably So look, I'll just be honest. I can barely play Cooper Cup on FanDuel because the salary is too high for me to want to allocate to a wide
Well, I
receiver.
got to him this week.
It's not like I never play him, but he's never someone I can prioritize. If I can prioritize someone like Devontae Adams instead and save like 800 in salary, I just typically end up doing that.
So now
So if Cooper
Devontae's
Cup's
losing
salary
targets
comes,
to MVS. All my guys are here.
it's a
My
very big
volatile
gym
boys.
week. Yeah, very big gym week.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, downgrade from 9,500 because I wasn't there anyway. But that's a little bit dismissive of saying like I'm just down on Cooper Cup. So name a salary for Cooper Cup, and then we'll name a
9,000.
salary on
I think it's worth
9,000.
9,000 still.
He
I
still
do
is.
think it gets a slight downgrade, but I think it's still worth that. They face the Jags next week, which is
Yeah.
worth mentioning. The
Yes.
Jags rush defense is pretty good, and the Rams rush offense is pretty bad. I think that helps a lot in terms of the spread for this game because I don't think Jacksonville will move the football. I think they're going to get crushed. But the Rams might have to throw a decent amount still just because I don't think they can run. Like, they're pretty bad from a rushing offense perspective.
I think we'll be pleased.
I saw.
Okay.
So yeah.
Odell's salary is 6,000. Van Jefferson, 58.
Do you prefer one over the other there?
I'm gonna prefer Van by a hair.
Might as well. I think Van's amazing. He had
His
4 deep
ADOT was like
targets.
twice as long.
Yeah, almost had that sick touchdown from Cup. You know, he's so volatile, but like he gets some like bunnies too. Also, everybody on this team, everybody in this game is junior. Odell Beckham Jr., Van Jefferson Jr., Marvin Jones Jr., Laviska Shenault Jr. Are there any like the fourths? Why isn't Bennett Skoranek the fourth? Like, if your first name is Bennett, you should be the fourth. I think that's like by law. Anyway, I think those salaries are very appropriate. They help to me offset some of the Stafford injury stuff because like they've converted on that volume. I don't think that concerns me with them. It concerns me with him and betting like Rams spreads and stuff like that.
Yeah, we also have a Darrell Henderson Jr. in this game. So,
do we? Allegedly. He might be the new T. Higgins. He might be the fake player. Anyway, let's move to situations to monitor. What other stuff stood out to you this week?
Yeah, so these are just some smaller observations that aren't really role changes, but for me, Jonathan Taylor's role being so good in like the stone worst situation against an elite rush defense was awesome. 70% snap rate, a pretty efficient 16 carries and 5 targets. So the only concern I think we could have had for Jonathan Taylor was like, could he still be scripted out in a bad situation? And he wasn't, which is fun. Myles Gaskin wound up playing 49% of the Dolphins snaps, but that game was out of hand. He had 10 of 14 running back carries in the first half, 1 of 2 running back targets. He's not the most efficient player, but it's still a pretty good workload for a running back. And I know we're talking about other value running backs. So are they on the main slate next week?
They get the Giants.
Okay.
I will not lie. I was looking at the Dolphins like playoff stuff last night. And I was like, why am I doing this? There's no point in this. But like, they're 5-7 and face the Giants. They have a bye, then they get the Jets. They could be 7-7. So just don't listen to me. But like, I looked into it.
Sounds like you read my power rankings piece on numberFire.com.
Did not. I had nothing else to do last week and decided to skip it. You know, not a busy week at all.
Yeah. But Gaskin 6,400 in that situation. I think his salary is going to remain in that range. The ceiling's not immense. I know that, but it's noteworthy. I think his role is pretty solid for a back in that range, which we don't always get.
Let me just pull up something quick before you move on. Just
okay.
Check something on him. Because I think I've used him in 2 lineups all year before this week, and I did use him a bit this week. The key shift for me was that he was starting to get some more red zone work, which he had not been previously. Okay. This week, 5 out of 15 chances. Some of those I think were late with Phillip Lindsay. Just 2 targets. You know, I think it's an okay roll. I'm warming, but I'm not fully in.
2 targets in the red zone.
2 targets overall.
Yeah, but he played half the snaps because they.
Yeah, that's true. I want to look into like first 3 quarters. Actually, I can do that now while we're here. Let me do that.
I mean, I got first half numbers in my notes.
Yeah, but third quarter matters too. Okay. So first 3 quarters, Gaskin had 14 carries. Lindsey did have 7. We'll note that. Gaskin had only 1 target in those first 3 quarters. Did get 1 later on. Well, it's kind of not.
I love how 10 of 14 first half carries gets written off in favor of third quarter numbers.
Okay. In the first 3 quarters, he had 4 out of 6. He had 4 out of 4 of 11 red zone chances. That's
their
not
win
bad.
probability was they were up 11 points. Their win probability was 82% at halftime, according to Next Gen Stats.
Yeah, but like I think that they were still trying in the third quarter. So,
all right. I mean, again, this is
the third quarter stuff actually helped your case. It helped you. Like Philip Lindsay had 7 carries, and like I'm noting that, but I think that like he had a decent red zone roll those first 3 quarters. Things fell off in the fourth quarter. I think it helped his case to look in the first 3 quarters.
I think for a salary,
as someone who bet the Dolphins money line, I didn't feel good about it until like there was no time left because they scare me.
Also, I'm out here for 9 a.m. Mondays looking up just specifically first half workloads, and it's not good enough for Jim.
Correct. It's never good enough. Just learn that. It's very easy. It's very easy to learn that. Just learn that. It's very easy.
Well, okay. You want to talk about something not good enough for Jim? Let's talk about T. Higgins.
I'm going to mute myself.
T. Higgins now has 1 more target than Jamar Chase in games that they've both played in. It's a 24% target share for T, 24.0, 23.7% for Chase. So basically the same. I'm not saying it's drastically different. The ADOT for Chase is better at 13.2 compared to Higgins at 11.0. But Higgins, I know Jim hates him. I still think there's a good case to be made for T. Higgins most weeks.
I'm preemptively annoyed that is going to be a good game stack this week. Good game to stack this week. It's Chargers versus Bengals.
66. Like, that's a... We don't get receivers there. T. Higgins or Hunter Renfro?
T. That's the easiest question you could have asked me.
Okay.
T.
I needed to see how far your T. Higgins hate went. So
not that far. It's not hatred. I just don't think he's a real player. I don't think he's actually a physical human being. Like, I see that he gets targets, but like, can I confirm that he does? No.
We love T. Higgins. Like, I
did, but that was before they had Jamar Chase, who Jamar Chase kind of matters,
Well, T. Higgins has more targets in games they both played in, so
I'm going to use him this week. I just don't.
I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, obviously, my level of self-hatred goes pretty far, so it's fine.
I would obviously. This is not T. Higgins has a better role, is better than Jamar Chase. This is really similar, and it reminds me of, I guess, last year with AJ Brown and Corey Davis with the Titans, where like AJ Brown was the better play all the time, but their workloads at times.
But Corey Davis actually did stuff. T. Higgins didn't do anything until this week.
I'm just going to move on and talk about someone who Jim loves, and then we'll get back on Jim's side with Cordero Patterson. I took a wait-and-see approach with Cordero. He had 108 yards, 2 touchdowns on 16 carries, played 49% of the snaps, same as Mike Davis. So that was a little bit of a concern, but Patterson had 3 of 4 red zone carries. We know that Patterson, even if they scale back his snap rate, he's going to get really high leverage looks in the red zone, get some receiving work. So I'm still going to have a hard time really allocating massive salary to him, which is what it generally takes to roster Cordero. But I understand the case. I just don't always want to bank on like elite efficiency on a per carry basis or multiple touchdowns to get me there. So I'm probably always going to be lower on Cordero than I would like to be otherwise. DJ Moore, despite everything going poorly for Carolina, had 10 targets for 103 yards. So his role has still been pretty good in games with Cam Newton. If the salary keeps dropping, DJ Moore is a good enough talent to want to get there. And then in this Patriots Titans game, we have a lot of like waiver wire fodder with running backs. The snaps for the Patriots, 35% for Damian Harris. And Ramondre Stevenson, 33% for Brandon Bolden. I can't get to Damian Harris. He was at like 40% last week. I'm not going to play him hardly at all. I think he'd have to be like in the 5,000 range, which he's never going to be for me to want to consider him. And then for the Titans, it was a 50-50 split for Dontrell Hilliard and Deontay Foreman. And this might be the worst offense in all of DFS.
Yep, I agree. I had a non-zero number of lineups with Des Fitzpatrick this week. That was stupid. If we're just going to get all my bad takes out there, I just might as well dump them. You know, I told JJ and Brandon that T. Higgins was a fake player on Sunday morning, and then he almost scored 2 touchdowns with 116 yards. So we're just going to dump all the bad takes out there. I'm guessing this is my situation, just to monitor. Should note that as being a podcast host. I'm guessing Javonte Williams will get some steam this week. Not entirely sure his role changed. His snap rate was a season high at 58%, but Melvin missed time with injury. Javonte had just one more adjusted opportunity than Melvin. They had a super positive game script. Javonte also had a 27% red zone share compared to Melvin at 36%. So don't know if there was really a role change there and would note that for them going forward. Marquez Valdez-Scantling's role is becoming less volatile, which I love. He has 5+ non-deep targets in consecutive games. So not like these weird deep shots that typically don't hit. He's getting like some bunnies. He is up to an 18% target share in games with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. He has a 43% deep target share. That role is improving rapidly, and I'm very into what he's doing. They're on bye this week, but noting that for after that. Devin Singletary's role did expand with Zach Moss inactive. It was more so him than Matt Breida. Singletary, 68% snap share, 15 carries, still had just 3 out of 11 red zone chances, 48 yards. So the concerns we've had with Singletary in the past are still there. Just noting that. Don't have to care about like non-DeAndre Swift, non-TJ Hawkinson Lions, but Josh Reynolds has earned a role at least. He had 5 targets. 2 of those were deep on Thanksgiving. 70 yards and a touchdown. That's not too bad. I'm not in on him right now with how run heavy they are, but I think it could dent TJ Hawkinson's target projection a tiny, tiny bit in that offense. Now that there's finally an actual like NFL level wide receiver on that team. The Titans passing game without AJ Brown was a hot mess. Cody Hollister and Nick Westbrook-Akine led in snaps and routes. Cody Hollister's FanDuel picture is the worst. So I can't ever consider him. Don't look it up. Neither had more than 5 targets or 25 yards. So like you said, the Titans are the worst, so we can skip over them. Let's go to philosophical changes from this past week, starting off with the Jets. First game with Zach Wilson back. The Jets early down first half pass rate was 45%. They were at 57% entering this week. They were actually able to move the football on the ground a bit. They had a 4-player committee, so I'd expect them to keep it up. The 4-player committee means we're probably not going to anyone on this team from a DFS perspective. I also think that the rush-heavy nature should impact the way we view Elijah Moore once Corey Davis is back. Brandon, do you agree where we should be wary of this Jets passing game, given how run-heavy they were?
Yeah, I think this might be one I'm willing to miss out on.
They do get Philly next week, so if Davis were to miss again, I would at least consider Elijah Moore, but I would need the salary to be a little bit low.
What would you need the salary to be?
58, probably.
61.
Okay. A little high. Smidge high. Prefer Van over Elijah Moore. At the respective salaries. Probably Odell. You know.
Yeah.
The Titans, just one more thing on them. Full establish it. 37% early down first half pass rates. Woof. So the Titans just a cross off. You had a couple notes on some pace here. What did you see there?
The Bills were outside the top 20 in pace for the past 2 games with on their plays with pre-snap win probability between 20 and 80%. So just excluding garbage time. So again, outside the top 20 in pace. Similar to their numbers through week 5 when they were slower, they sped it up in the middle of the season from week 6 through 10, but they might be slowing it back down. So just an offense that should not really have a lot of issues, but kind of does have some issues. Just kind of worth noting. Houston in games finished by Tyrod Taylor have averaged 28.1 seconds per play with a 57% pass rate. That would rank over the full season second in pace, 20th in pass rate, which isn't terrible. So they've been playing faster with Tyrod Taylor, which helps keep those games a little bit more fun for teams that aren't, like for a team that's not really relevant itself, keeps games a little bit better.
They get Indy next week too. That's a good thing.
And then Tampa Bay, since they're by top 6 in pace each week, their average rank before that was 18th. So some promising numbers there.
I think that's a good thing. I think the Houston stuff is noteworthy because we could have some like game script concerns around Jonathan Taylor next week. If they're going to play fast and like be decent, that's less of a concern. So I think that's a positive for next week for sure. Okay, let's get into the salary scroll for week number 13. We go to the FanDuel Sunday Million for the next week and go position by position. Just shout out things that stand out to us in terms of salaries. Starting off at quarterback, what are you seeing there?
No high salaries. Lamar leads at 85.
Tom Brady's 81. I'm going to go back again. I'm going to regret it.
Oh, yeah. 81 in the dome against Atlanta. Absolutely.
Yeah, buddy.
Matthew Stafford, 78 at the Jaguars. I think he's back on the menu after what I saw this week.
Joe Burrow is 74. I don't like using guys against the Chargers because they are so good at limiting big plays, but like I'm not going to cross him off at that number. Also, Russ is 73. If he does anything Monday, that could be interesting.
Not the most appealing quarterback slate by any means.
No. It's not terrible though, because we do get Kyler back. Lamar's on the main slate against Pittsburgh. Like that's not a good matchup, and he kind of struggled, obviously a little bit last night. Kind of, maybe an understatement.
Higher salary for you, Andy Dalton or Ben Roethlisberger? Because it's Andy Dalton. Roethlisberger's salary is $6,500.
Jared Goff is 64.
Yikes.
Okay. So
the standouts were Lamar, Brady,
maybe
for
Burrow
me,
/
Stafford,
Russ,
and then maybe Burrow or Russ.
Probably shouldn't go Russ, but like I'll keep an eye on him on Monday.
I'm not
going to watch that game. Yeah,
I need DK Metcalf to fall shy of like 7 points.
So it's a lock-it game for us, right?
Yeah, let's hope.
Quarterback's better than this week, but still not the best. Let's go to running back. Jonathan Taylor is 10-5. That's where he should be. I think that's fully appropriate.
Yeah.
Mixon is 94. He's had a lot of upside games.
Yes.
Like a lot. Prefer Mixon at 94 or Eckler at 9,000?
Mixon's targets have been 4-0-5-5-0-6. So like some games in there with not a whole lot. I would say I still think I would go with Mixon.
I do too. I would say the same there. I think the mid-range running back is going to be a pretty big thing this week.
Najee Harris's salary is down to 8,000. He has not done a whole lot lately.
Facing a good defense. That offense has not been functional.
I don't think I can get there myself.
Yeah, I'd be okay missing out if it burns me.
Like Fournette over Najee at that rate?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason we would have favored Najee previously was because of targets, but now Fournette's basically James White. So, James White if James White were yoked and getting a lot of early down work. Yeah, in the mid-range, we have Fournette, we have Mitchell, we have someone I'm going to skip over. If there's no Chase Edmonds, James Conner at 73.
Yeah, I don't think
is on the map.
Yeah, I think Edmonds might be back the following week.
Well, he's eligible now, I think, right? Or did he? No, because we had the one game where he basically didn't play but was active. So it's like I think you're right. It's been 2 games. So I'm pretty sure you're right, where he wouldn't be back with. Saquon is $7,200, 86% snap rate this week, 23 adjusted opportunities. Facing
For
Miami.
how many yards?
53.
53.
He had 30 of them on one carry, or 34, something like that. But there's no Fletcher Cox. That's good. I'm going to be there probably.
I think running back lets you get anywhere you want.
Yeah.
Like you can play Taylor, Mixon, Eckler. You could talk yourself into Madison without Cook, Lenny, and then we have the low 7,000 guys. You can justify Cordero at 74 in a game that should have points, even though the rushing matchup isn't good.
I just saw that David Montgomery is 65. I should probably just go him over Saquon because are they actually different players right now? 85% snap rate, not the best yardage upside. Are they actually different players right now? Maybe I should go Monty. Maybe I should go neither.
Well, doesn't David Montgomery have like the leg strength of Saquon Barkley, or
yeah, he's got like the athleticism of Sony Michel, which is the biggest slap in the face of that.
It's the feet of Saquon.
Yeah.
Vision of Le'Veon, strength of Zeke, and athleticism of Sony Michel.
Oh boy. Boston's got 66, Montgomery 65, Jamal 65. I bet we get something viable in that range. Also Gaskin 64. We'll probably get something there. It's
possible too. We'll look at receiver. I know we have George Kittle at 63 already, but
yeah,
with like Lamar, Tom Brady, potentially, the higher salaried receivers that we would want to stack them with, like depending on where I don't know, Marquis Brown. We haven't talked about him, but it could honestly be a 2 value back week by Sunday, depending on how good these roles actually project to be.
I would not be shocked at all. Also, just noting this, I'm not saying I care. Antonio Gibson is 62.
I had a feeling that was coming.
Like he's gotten more volume recently, not necessarily as a receiver. I'm noting it. I'm not saying I want to get there, but like, I'm noting it. That's all I'm doing.
You can note it.
Yep, that's fair. Let's go to receiver. What stands out to you there?
Only 3 guys have an 8 or 9 in front of their salary. That's Cooper Kupp at 9,000, Debo Samuel at 82, and he might not even play. And then Justin Jefferson at 8,000 against the Lions, which is kind of appealing. But then it's down to 76 for Chris Godwin and Adam Thielen. So I guess not a whole lot of opportunities to allocate massive salary to a receiver, unless you're saying you're going to roster 3 guys in the 7,000 range, which of course would fit that bill.
I think the advantage of that is we can use the value backs to get to Jonathan Taylor at 10.5 or Joe Mixon at 9.4.
Yeah.
So I think that's actually probably a positive for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
DK is 73. Let's hope he gets good uses this week, but like doesn't do a lot with it. We can save your team. But we can use him next week. How about that? Is that a fair compromise?
Look, I would take the 8 targets, 31 yards, or the 8 targets, 26 yards.
So each of the past 2 games.
Yeah.
Like DK should not be in the same range as Deontay Johnson and Terry McLaurin. Like from a salary perspective, he should be. Like they're doing the right thing, but like you should never see someone with Russell freaking Wilson as a quarterback in that same range as those guys who have like dust balls as quarterbacks. But like I get it at the same time.
Marquis Brown, another 10 target game. So that's 4 straight with double-digit targets.
Yep.
5 of the past 6 double-digit targets. Hasn't done a whole lot with them the past 2 games, so that could keep the divisional matchup. But it's the first time that they've played, so I think he's interesting for our Lamar stacks. Just so that we don't overlook him entirely.
The high 6 range, Brandon, it's back. It's not bad. We get Lockett at 69, nice. Jalen Waddle at 69, nice. Michael Pittman at 68, Darnell to the Mooney, 67. Redacted T. Higgins at 66.
Brandon Cooks, baby.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah, he's oversalaried.
He might be the new T. Oh gosh, Mike Williams is 65 in a game we're probably gonna want to stack. Yeah, his role is actually bad now. He had 8 targets for the first time since October 10th.
Seems
Didn't
bad.
do a lot with it.
Mike Williams or Hunter Renfro?
How dare you? Please leave. Can I eject you from the call? I know I can. I took you out of the call briefly.
I saw.
Power move. The people listening to the audio version are like, what's wrong with these guys? Are they on drugs? No. Devontae Smith at 63 against the Jets. I'll give it some thought. I might be willing to forgive Jalen Hurts at that salary.
There's going to be a lot of nitpicking we have to do at both running back and receiver. Not so much as
there are
quarterback.
options in each tier at both positions.
So we're really going to have to think through. Like you can talk yourself into a Devontae Smith, but let's say Devontae Smith and Leonard Fournette or Myles Gaskin and like a Chris Godwin, Jamar Chase. Like you're going to have those 2v2s that you can do every lineup. So I think it's really going to be one where I got to figure out which tier I'm building around. It's not going to be the middle of both. Absolutely. I want to have access to the higher upside guys from the top of each salary range.
Yeah.
Or each position, sorry.
Yeah.
But boy, this is going to be one we got to really dig through.
Yep. Odell 6,000. We mentioned that before. We have Van at 58 as well. Both those very interesting. If Tony plays, he's 56. I don't tend to like using receivers against Miami all that much. And I think Miami could give the Giants offensive line some issues just with like how Daniel Jonesy they can be. But it's there.
Don't pass up T.Y. Hilton against the Texans.
I would like to.
That's his time to shine.
Where are we at on Bait Boy? He's $5,500. The yardage upside hasn't really been there. Just 4 targets this past week.
No touchdowns yet.
Those will come, I think, with the way he plays. I think that's kind of where he can win.
If you believe in regression, yes, they'll come.
I was still touchdown regression wasn't real. Yeah, the low 5,000s are pretty booty, but everything else, the high 5,000s are pretty good, and the 6,000s are pretty good.
That's fine because the low 5,000 range really feels like that's where it's like, hey, it only takes one. If this guy gets a big games don't really come from these guys very often, and they're even harder to predict. So
correct.
Yeah, really limit your exposure to guys like this because they can bust the lineup pretty easily.
I do need to apologize though. I said there was nothing in the low 5,000s, and your boy Ashton Doolin, fresh off a 62-yard touchdown and 1 target, he's down there. So I'm sorry, Ashton. Dedicated listener. I feel bad.
Your guy Josh Reynolds 51.
I don't need that. He's the best of that range, but I don't need that. I don't need the your guy. That's worse than Ian Poulter. Like let's not be doing this.
All right.
Okay, tight end.
Hey, look, Laquan Treadwell 4,900.
Nope.
I do think a lot of people would just be like,
would you rather Laquan Treadwell or Laviska Shenault? That's the question.
Oh boy. Probably Treadwell for the yardage upside because he had 53 this week.
Is Laviska allowed to get to 53?
He did one. I think he got the 99 once this year.
When was that? The DJ Chark game where he left early?
Yeah, and everyone went nuts, I believe.
Nope. Okay, tight end. Mark Andrews 73, Gronk 7,000 to lead things off.
Boy, George Kittle is going to be so chalky.
That's fine. It's good chalk.
Kyle Pitts 62.
What is
he hasn't cleared 30 yards. Okay. Boy, he had 119, 163 yards, and then since then 13, 62, 60, 29, 26.
Mm-hmm.
1 touchdown this year still. Jeez, oh man. I mean, I have him in one of my fantasy teams, so I should have known that. But
Get Sticky is 6,000. Dallas Goedert's 58. He didn't do anything because I had a decent amount of him this week. He had 1 reception for 0 yards.
Mm-hmm.
He has not had more than 14 FanDuel points this year.
Yeah.
He had 3 targets, which is probably a 30% target share on the Eagles.
You played him in our head-to-head.
Did I?
And I won by like 0.8 points. So.
I hate the Eagles. Why did I use him?
I don't know. I was really surprised.
Well, I liked him, so I'm not.
By the way, I
shocked
feel
that
like
used him.
this is something Jim would do, but it's 9-3 through 12 weeks in our head-to-head, so Jim's got to win out to force a tie break.
Not that I've never done that before, right?
Yeah, it's coming. That pain of golf still haunts me.
Fryermuth is 54. I think he's in concussion protocol, I believe. So he might not be able to play. If he does, I think he's fine at 54, but it's so hard to have any positive sentiment towards that offense right now.
Correct. I do think that we will have to be realistic with the rest of our lineups so that we can allocate some salary back up to tight end.
Yes.
Because we have Mark Andrews, Rob Gronkowski. I won't even count Darren Waller. George Kittle can still throw in Kyle Pitts because we know what he's capable of. TJ Hawkinson, if we're like believing a little bit. Mike Gesicki, Dallas Goedert. That's like even 5 if you cut off 2 of those guys you don't really believe in. Those guys statistically some of them are going to put up solid games. So
yeah. The one exception I would say is Foster Moreau is 5,000 if Waller can't go. That's a pretty good salary for him, given that he played a massive role the one game Waller missed.
Yeah.
5 targets on Thanksgiving, didn't do much with them, but like I would say he would be the one viable guy at 5,000.
That and then no James O'Shaughnessy for you?
No.
Okay.
Gerald Everett at 50 or 49 is, I will say his name.
Sure.
Because Pete Carroll was like, we got to keep getting Gerald Everett the ball. He said that this week. He also gets like rush attempts, which is fun. Not that matters a lot, but like, he's kind of Debo-ish. He also is like the top athletic comp to Derrick Henry on Mock Draftable. If you just look at all positions. If I were playing Madden right now, put Gerald Everett at running back, see what happens. That's what I would do.
I 100% believe you would do that.
Yep. If I didn't have like Leon Washington to use at running back or Trenton Cannon, I would use Gerald Everett. Okay.
What Madden are you playing?
Well, older ones. But Leon Washington was great. Trenton Cannon was great. Do not besmirch them. Defense. Just scroll to the bottom and see what pops out. Oh boy. Okay. I'm just going to spit this out. Disregard the next 5 seconds. The Jets are $3,500 against Eagles. Okay, back. We are back. What do you see in here?
Yeah, I mean, defense isn't really my thing. I would say
Dolphins at 4,000.
Houston at 33.
Yeah.
Like if you really are looking for a punt, I think they're the one that stands out to me most.
I think
down there.
Defense is similar to tight end. We're probably going to allocate some salary to it this week.
To feel good, yes.
So if I put in like Kittle and the Dolphins and just like, I think, so typically what I do is I'll put in like the lowest salary defense I can tolerate, so I know what I'm working with, and then I'll go up from there, depending on how things work for the rest of the lineup. I might need to lock in defense and tight end this week to make sure because like I am guilty of
building lineups that look awesome, and then you have 1,900 left for your defense.
No, not quite, but guilty of going down to Dan Arnold at tight end because I needed the salary savings. So I feel like I agree with you where I do need to allocate enough salary to tight end, unless I go with Foster Moreau if there's no Darren Waller. That'd be the one exception for me there. Any final thoughts for you on salaries?
No, I think that's my like first read on things. I like that we added this because it helps me start to think about the slate and not just the recap, because we want to recap stuff but spin it forward.
That's the point.
And doing this for myself is really, really helpful to start thinking about next week already.
Speaking of next week, let's do a note to future me. I think to me, the thing that I would say is dig into the mid-range at each position, decide which mid-range is the best, and be comfortable building around that mid-range. I think it'll probably be running back if I had to guess. But That's what I want to look at this week. What about for you?
Yeah, I really want to think through the guys like Jamal Williams, Boston Scott, Josh Jacobs, Miles Gaskin, and really look at their upside and their paths to 20 FanDuel points relative to the stud running backs and see what that kind of gets me. But I think I'm also going to do a lot of like 2v2 swaps and comparisons and see what that kind of gets me. Maybe even 3v3 with tight end if I consider Everett, Moreau, maybe James O'Shaughnessy, and see like what I feel best about, and that might actually help lead me toward the freedom to start building my lineups after all.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to view things. So we'll talk a lot about those mid-ranges on Thursday. Maybe that'll be a trend, the workload of the mid-range running backs. We'll talk about that as a thing for this week. Speaking of which, that is on Thursday at 10 a.m. back to our usual time. I just turned off the background for some reason on the show. Anyway, it'll be at our usual time, 10 a.m. on the FanDuel YouTube page and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. So make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube page. Also, if you're watching YouTube right now, hit that like button because that does help us out a bunch. And also hit subscribe on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. NBA and NHL Daily via Tom Vecchio, PGA back after the new year, and Austin Swain back with some UFC later on this week as well. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I am at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Hope that your Thanksgiving was great. Hope that week 12 went well for you. And let's spin it back and do well in week number 13 as well. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.